Welcome to Club Soda's Mindful Drinking Festival. We're online, global, and as always, absolutely free. Hi, I'm Drew, and I'm one of the co-founders of Club Soda.
And I'm Laura, the other co-founder of Club Soda. We help you change your drinking in ways that help you live well. So whether you're looking to cut down, stop for a bit, or quit, you can find what you need from podcasts and books and courses on joinclubsoda.com. This festival, we've brought you an amazing lineup from over 100 people from across the world.
And our programme this time really is global.
Every day starts down under with me, Sarah. As well as organising the festival in Australia, I spend my time looking for alcohol-free alternatives and tips for people who choose not to drink, but who still want to live a social, fun and adventurous life.
And I'll be wrapping up each day here in the States. I'm Amanda, your US festival host and coordinator, and I'm also a mindset coach who helps women change their relationship with alcohol so that they can start living their most authentic life.
Each day with a rolling programme of inspirational panels, conversations, social events, and opportunities to discover new low and low alcohol drinks.
So whether you want inspiration to change your drinking,
Or to connect with other people,
or you want to discover and enjoy a new low and no alcohol drink,
The Mindful Drinking Festival is for you.
cheers!
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 cheers.
Well, indeed, cheers everyone, and welcome to our session. How do we make money or not make money out of low and no alcohol products? I've got a panel here of probably the finest pioneers in the no and low category. I've got Sam, Chris, and Lorelei all coming in from the US, and then there's David in here from London, and myself from not so sunny Dublin. So I'm just going to introduce, get you guys to introduce yourselves, and start with ladies first. I'll start with Lorelei. Can you tell us a little bit about your organisation and what you do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lorelei. I'm the founder of Listen Bar, which is a booze-free bar in Brooklyn. And we launched in October 2018 with a proof of concept. And since then, we've been doing pop-up events all over the city, gotten incredible press, like Snoop Dogg asked us to name a drink after him. And we are now virtual. We are hosting private parties, and we have a virtual alcohol-free cocktail course on demand.
Superb. Well, Snoop Dogg, you can't get better than that, asking you to name a drink after him. Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about Sans Bar?
Hi, yes, my name is Chris Marshall. I'm the owner and founder of Sans Bar based in Austin, Texas. We had our first pop-up in 2017, moved to a physical space in the summer of 2018. And then over the course of 2019 and before COVID, we were doing a tour across the country and some spots in Canada. We were just hosting sober events. We're about connection and community. Great,
Chris, thank you very much. Sam, fire away. Tell us a little bit about Getaway. I follow you kind of every day on Instagram, and it's always exciting to see what you're up to.
Yeah, lately it's been a lot of coffee and breakfast sandwiches because because of COVID, we're kind of a coffee shop for the time being because we can do that easily through a window. But we are an alcohol-free bar, you may have guessed, in Brooklyn, and we opened in April of last year, April 2019. And, you know, we were going strong until March of this year, and now we're kind of taking a little break, but we'll be back soon.
Sounds like you're in the same boat as the rest of us, just paddling very hard and just seeing what's happening with the stormy waters ahead. David, a bit closer to me here in Dublin, London, the Fugitive. Tell us a little bit about your space. You're on mute.
That was a good start, wasn't it? So we're in East London, so Bethnal Green, and we launched Fugitive Motel last June. And actually, the low and no alcohol category feeds right into the very heart of our brand name. The motel aspect of it is we're US inspired, our decor, our bar games, etc. And the fugitive aspect was really a bit of a playful poke at the drinks industry in terms of, you know, the drinks industry not changing quick enough when there's all these really great low and no alcohol products out there. And yeah, our research showed before we launched that our demographic, was receptive to those products, and it's now great to have a physical space and be actually, presenting them to our customers.
And a little bit about us. I'm here in the Virgin Mary Bar. Obviously, there's no customers in here at the moment, which means that we have a nice, clean broadcast. But we set up in May 2019. And just like Sam over there in Brooklyn, we were kind of like flying along, and then COVID struck. So now we are offering an online alcohol-free products to all our customers in Ireland. Something that we said we'd do in January, and the timing of it was pretty good, because by April we were up and running with our alcohol-free online service at the virginmarybar.com, and we are due to open our doors back to customers hopefully within the next few weeks or so. So thank you very much, all of you, for introducing your organizations. It's a really great, diverse panel we've got here. And I'm going to go straight into our questions so we can kind of get the conversation going. So let's start off with why did you start a business based around the no-low category? Sam, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I had no background. I think like a lot of us were, mostly outsiders in this industry, the drinks industry, hospitality industry. And I'm the same way. My brother is sober. He's been in AA, a proud AA member and a vocal AA member for about 5 years. I think he's coming up on 5 years. So he and I are good friends. We go out together, and we just found that when he stopped drinking, it was like, where do we go? What do we do? What's the way we socialize? That's not just like going to a coffee shop or something. And we missed that. So that just got the gears turning, and I got really excited about it. And, one foot in front of the other, decided to open it up.
Great. And Chris, what about your journey? Because you were a kind of bit of ahead of us, and you were looking at this category probably a little bit earlier than some of the other people on the panel. Tell us a little bit about how you got into it.
Yeah, so I was a counselor here in Austin. I've been a counselor for 8 years and working with people who were struggling with alcohol and other substances. And my orientation to this came, again, like Sam was saying, I'm not a bar owner. I was never a bartender. I just saw there was a real need in the market for people to have a third space that did not include alcohol. As I was working with people, they would struggle. They'd go to treatment, maybe get better, or maybe start going to meetings. But then once they decided to step out into the social scene, there was nothing for them. And I had a client pass away, and one of the last conversations we had was just how hard it was to be a 20-something-year-old in Austin, where there's lots of fun and lots of things to do, but there's nothing to do for sober people. So that was my goal, was to find a space for that person, and for all people who struggled to find that space. And I understood that more than just people that were struggling with alcohol would want to come to a place like this. It's about connection. So I feel like this is a space for everyone, not just for people who are sober or sober curious.
Okay, thank you. I've been to Austin, and it is indeed a party town. So I can see why you wanted to create something there, especially.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Dublin. It's known for the booze scene that's there. Lorelei, tell us a bit about Listen and how you came up with the concept.
Listen Bar started on a dare. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine dared me to take a month off of drinking. And to my delight and surprise, I realized how much I enjoyed going out without drinking. And kind of how everyone's been saying, it also made me see sort of the gaps in the market and how much it became sort of my responsibility to then take charge of the situation and manage like the bartenders, manage like the people around me, like manage everything about that experience became sort of like a emotional labor, even though it was so enjoyable. And that's because the bar industry isn't set up for the no alcohol experience. And so my background before Listen Bar was in innovation consulting. So I had a lot of experience with looking at gaps in markets and designing experiences and seeing opportunities for innovation. And so what I also knew from that is that this is something that I know I've mentioned to you guys, that idea that like you can't solve a problem with the mindset that created it. So I realized I kept waiting for the bar industry to wise up to the idea that people want to go out without drinking and to curate that experience for me. And what I realized was that they were just too set into their mindset that alcohol is the only way that a bar can work. And so it would take an outsider to change that. And then I was like, why not me?
Why not you? Indeed, and very very kind of brave thing to do. I think for all of you guys in the way that you kind of look to take non-alcohol forward. And a very good point there, Lorelei, about why. And I wondered about it too. Why haven't the big players, created non-alcohol establishments? And it's only BrewDog that have recently done it with their AF bar in London. While we're in London, David, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you use non-alcohol and alcohol in your mix and how the non-alcohol side works?
Sure thing. So the analogy we always kind of come back to is you walk into a British pub, and I think it's fair to say that most pubs you'll walk in and they'll have one alcohol-free option, which typically would be, I don't know, a Beck's Blue or a product like that, and there's nothing wrong with that product, but over a 3-year period, I was just sort of getting more and more interested in it through my own moderation and seeing my peer group around me, which really coincided with the rise of great craft low and no products. So I just, a bit like Lorelei to an extent, I don't know if it was necessarily a dare, but I certainly started thinking to myself with my business partner, could we do this? Could it happen? Why hasn't it happened in London yet? Why has no one else done it? And so actually one of the founders of Club Soda I met quite early on and had quite a few discussions with them and Laura, and then it came from that conceptual awakening, let's call it, to then where we are today, which is a 300 square meter site in Bethnal Green. So we're very large. It's a great space. And low and no alcohol is absolutely integrated within our wider offering. So, for example, we've got alcohol-free beer on draft tap, which you don't see very much at all around London. It's starting to come now, which is good. So and just having those low and no products integrated across our product range, and not going back to that kind of bottle in the bottom of the fridge, that one alcohol-free alternative, that one bottle of Beck's Blue, we have it completely integrated. So yeah, we're passionate about that.
I think a lot of our viewers will have been there, gone into a pub and asked for a non-alcohol or a zero alcohol offering, and the person behind the bar saying, we've only got one bottle, generally it's Heineken or something like Beck's or Erdinger, and the choice therefore is really poor in terms of non-alcohol based drinks within traditional drinking environments. And that's probably what we've all seen and why we've all gone and said, right, there's so much more we can do with flavor and taste here, and how can we bring that to people that want that, I suppose, diverse range of flavors that you get from alcohol, because after all, alcohol is a flavor amplifier. And how do we do it without alcohol? And what can we offer to people that is not sodas, sugar, aspartame, all that kind of rubbish that's out there at the moment? But the main question of this panel is, can we make money from non-alcohol? And I'm going to come through to you, Chris, sir, and if you can tell us a little bit about the financials and how your kind of place works.
Yeah, so I started off Sands Bar with $200. I just did not have any money to start, and I had to just figure this out as I went. There wasn't much of a model here in the United States, and so I just started kind of doing the pop-ups. And when we moved into a physical space, I just grew at the pace of the audience. I did not think that it was prudent to go get a huge space because there just did not seem like a huge audience. in Austin. And I still don't think there's a huge audience for this. It's very niche, but that's okay. We really focus on that. So we derive most of our income from the bar itself, but usually renting out the space that we occupy. And then also we do a lot of like catered events or, mobile bartending where we go to weddings and graduation parties. And there's a strong sober curious community here. So we do a lot of baby showers and things off site. And that really is, brings in some money. And then the tour itself, the national tour, is bringing in a great amount of money because we're working with great brands to bring products to consumers. And that interaction, that experience around product is beneficial for Sands Bar, but it's also beneficial for those drink producers. And so that's really the way that we're making most of our money. We're not going to depend on just the bar itself to keep this thing afloat. That just never seemed right to me. And actually, when I started this thing, I talked to 4 or 5 people who had tried to start sober bars in the United States, and they said they all made the same mistakes. They built this thing hoping people would come without doing any market research, just inspired by their own personal stories. And then they took out a huge chunk of loan, opened this space up for 7 days, and no one showed up. And so I think that I took those lessons of failure and integrated them into like my plan for success. And just wanted to grow at a pace. And it's a small pace, and it's a slow pace, but that's what I feel is best because it's helped me to create community. And I think that as we continue to go across the country, whenever that's a thing again, we'll continue to see this kind of growth, in brand recognition and just income.
Lorelei, I'm going to let you build on that because I think it's a similar model in terms of what you do and your consulting and it's building those layers. You start off with the bar concept, and then, as Chris says, you build another layer on top in terms of what you do. Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Thank you. Yeah, it is similar and it is a little bit different. In a sense, I went for that market research when we did our pop-up, our first proof of concept. It was a 5-day proof of concept where we rented out this built-out bar space, and it, was a really big success. We got into the Wall Street Journal before we poured our first drink. And I have no connections at the Wall Street Journal. Like there was no favor. And it was a really interesting learning lesson because then it really informed our business model because we had these huge spikes when we had special programming. We had our launch party, we had a press night, we had a Halloween party, and then we had 2 nights in between where I wanted to see like what would this feel like if it's just a neighborhood bar that people kind of stumble into. And those nights were really kind of like beautiful and homey and like made me excited for what this could be as a permanent space. But they also really showed me that in terms of what I wanted for Listen Bar to prove at this stage, both in the business and in the culture, I wanted to really work with that kind of concentrated audience, and that programming is key. So our business model is that we are mostly, when we do IRL events, like in real life events, we do pop-ups. And so we partner with venues that have like bars built out. And usually it is some version of a bar revenue share, which means that what we also do, aside from the fact that we create the whole programming for the night, we bring in our bartenders, we bring in our bar menu, like all of those kind of early on investment into the experience then carry through into every single pop-up. And then what it also means is that we get ticket revenue from all the people who buy tickets to attend. And then on top of that, so there's like, okay, there's the bar revenue, then there's the ticket revenue, then there's sponsorships. Like Chris said, we have really amazing relationships with drinks makers in the industry, and we recognize that the real estate on our menu is one of our most valuable assets. So when drinks producers are really excited, like, oh my God, I'm a new drinks producer, like I want to send you guys product, like can we be at the next party? I'm like, that is super dope. I'm really excited to taste your product. These are our rates if you want to be on the menu for one night. And then from there, we can look at what a partnership would look like to be a permanent part of the menu. And similar to Chris, we were building out like a national and a world tour right when COVID hit. So there's a lot of opportunities then once we've established a partnership and we know that this product does really well, you know, then we can grow that partnership into like tour experiences, etc. And so then from there come the layers of beyond the bar and the experience. Like, one of the things that I learned from my innovation background is to really kind of understand what business you're in and to see that as like broader than your category, broader than, because it opens up a lot of different verticals. And so with Listen Bar, we are in the business of reinventing nightlife beyond alcohol. And so that means that there's a lot of different things that we have expertise in, that we can create experiences around. And so it went into like virtual happy hours where we were teaching from our menu and having, live experiences with our community online. We have done amazing research projects. We're actually about to publish our first research report on our community and what we've learned about the alcohol-free market. The research report hasn't been announced yet, so I'm giving you guys a bit of like a preview. We're about to launch a mastermind series, bringing together creative visionaries from our community to reimagine nightlife at this time when everything is changing. So because we're super clear on our business and on our values and what we want to create into the world, it's allowed me to open up all these different verticals outside of just we make money by selling drinks.
Okay, that's really interesting. I think both what you're saying, Chris, and Lorelei, is that it's looking at opportunities. I would love to charge my suppliers that are on our menu. I love the way that you Americans are so commercial. Sam, I imagine that you had more than $200 in your pocket when you set up Getaway. Tell us a little bit about how you make money at Getaway.
Hi. So first of all, it's a really, this is, we're all running businesses. And so this is the big question that we're thinking about all the time. Even if it's not why we got into it, it's like always there in the back of our mind. So I'll try not to ramble here, but I have a lot to say. Stop me if you need to. Anyway, I wanted to connect a couple dots here. So I thought it was interesting. Chris mentioned, there had been previous attempts to do this, and he had heard these horror stories of people kind of like doing the if we build it, they will come model, and then opening for a week and nobody showed up. And I had read those same stories and they totally freaked me out. And then, and Lorelei mentioned getting a Wall Street Journal, mention before she had even opened her first pop-up. And I think that what both of those things point to is that times are changing and people's reception to, interest and willingness to try these new things is really changing. So there are people who are maybe sober curious, maybe, had never thought about coming, reducing their drinking or stopping drinking before. There's also people who I think weren't drinking, who were sober, for a long time, but never thought, oh, I can go out and do that. I can enjoy a social life that, where I go out of my apartment or out of meetings or whatever. And so this is a whole other conversation that I won't get into right now, but for whatever reason, I think the timing is just right now. The timing is just different now because, like I said, I read all those stories that Chris mentioned, and but when we opened, we were busy. I mean, especially in that first month, there was a ton of buzz. I think, Lorelei also, Listen Bar had primed the market for, they opened a few months before that. So people were like getting excited about this concept. Julia, who I see is in the chat, Julia Bainbridge, was the first one to cover us. She found us before we had even opened, and she's been really pushing this stuff forward in her writing. So I think there's just a lot of like a confluence of things that have made this the right moment. So that said, we did, go with the model of like, if we build it, they will come. And thank God they did come. And we've had nights where no one comes. Literally, I don't know if we've ever had a total like 0-person night, but we've had nights where 3 people show up. It's pouring outside. It's a Tuesday. 3 people show up. We definitely lose money on those nights. But the thing about that is that any bar, any restaurant is going to lose money, on those kinds of nights here and there. To get down to like really, nitty gritty, how do we make money? How do we lose money? Whatever. How do we break even? We're running a brick and mortar 6 or 7 days a week bar and now coffee shop. And that means that we're staffing it for 6 or 7 days, a week. And we're paying rent for for 30, 31 days a month. And so those things, we're paying the staff, we're paying the rent, no matter how many customers we get in there. And so, in that sense, it is the same model as any bar, any restaurant. There's no like special formula that's really unique or different for us. It's just a question of how do we sell more drinks? How do we bring in more people? Like I said, luckily there's been a lot of interest, so that gets us through, most of the months. But I think the major difference, and this is the point I've been we're getting to here, I think the major difference and the major challenge we have is that it's not the margin on each drink. It's not the, alcohol you can charge a lot and non-alcohol you can't. I think that's not a real issue. People are happy to pay for quality drinks. The real issue is that with alcohol, people go out on these benders and they drink all night. One drink leads to another drink, leads to another drink, leads to another drink. And I think when you're not drinking alcohol, that unique effect doesn't really happen. People will drink 2 or 3 drinks often, but then they'll stop. They'll say, okay, I'm good. I'm not drunk and I'm going to be responsible and I'm going to go home and go to bed. And then they stop spending money. And so I like Lorelei mentioned, a lot of it is just about what else can we say? It's food. For us, it's food, it's events, it's catering, it's online stuff. But
so Sam, we need a bit more irresponsibility in your bar. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's right. It's definitely the kind of conundrum of running an alcohol-free bar is you want people to be responsible, or you want to foster that responsibility, but you also want them to open their wallets and throw their money everywhere. So
and I think when I'm talking with Anna, who's our bar manager here, Anna Walsh, who's our drinks curator, and she's fantastic. She creates amazing flavors, amazing range of drinks. She says on some nights, we have a similar kind of experience to you, Sam. On some nights we are like buzzing. She says there's a real buzz about the place, and people are walking out going, God, wow, I feel a bit tipsy, And I think seeing some of your stuff, Lorelei, they look like great parties, and I'm sure that everybody's got really and Chris is same for you. It's like people are having great times within the events that you create, and when you've got that volume of people there, you feel as a bar owner or as an entrepreneur that's working in this category, you feel fantastic that people are getting what you're trying to do. David, you've got a slightly different kind of approach because you have got people irresponsibly spending money in your motel, but then you've got those people that don't. How does that dynamic work?
I think it works really well, genuinely. I think because the type of customer that comes to Fugitive Motel, typically our customer base is kind of students upwards to kind of 35, 40, living in the East London area, a very liberal mindset, very willing to try new things. And yeah, we've absolutely had some really cracking nights here where we've, the front bar area has been a private alcohol-free party. And we had a really great few actually back in dry January, as we call it in the UK, which sort of around 5 million people obviously take part in every year, growing every year. The front bar was I think 70, 80 guys that had come for an alcohol-free party. The back of the bar was our locals, and absolutely it was tangible in amongst the local community of just like, oh, what's going on kind of the other side of the pillar. And it was genuinely real respect of just like, oh, that's cool. They're doing their thing. we're doing our thing, and we've never had, in the time we've been here, a year, like we've never had any issue of kind of, you know, I'm choosing to be alcohol free tonight, and you're not respecting that. You know, we've never had that kind of behaviour transgression, and I, that is definitely down to this type of customers we get in here. But equally, it's how we manage the venue, how we manage the space, how we manage the products, and all that we wanted to set out to achieve with Fugitive Motel was creating a modern social drinking experience, which is completely inclusive. So if you choose to, you know, if you choose to drink an alcohol-free beer because you don't want to, you know, feel a bit heady in the morning because you've got a million things to do, then you can do that next to a person who's on a bender. You know, to use that phrase, and it genuinely does. It genuinely does work. So.
So yeah. just on that point, how does your margins on your alcohol based products work against, you know, the margins that you have on your non-alcohol, or is it pretty similar?
It's fairly similar to kind of follow on from Sam's point there. We take a common sense approach because this is how I feel as a consumer who moderates drinking. If I go into a bar and choose to not drink that evening and have an alcohol-free drink, then I do feel that I would expect to pay slightly less than a premium alcohol product. Now I know a lot. Some of the new alcohol-free brands that are coming into the category for their own pricing strategy reasons are obviously trying to break that down. Personally, it's just our approach. We feel that it's pricing as a premium soft drink. So we're still talking 70% margin. That's what we try and achieve. But it's just being having a common sense approach with our consumers that. Yeah, you know, it doesn't have that alcohol content. Yes, a lot of these products still go through a brewing process and still take the same amount of time to be produced. But we just try and pass on sensible prices to the customer.
That makes sense. I'm going to move on to customers because I'm sure a lot of people watching are kind of, well, certainly before we set up our bar, you know, we were given all this kind of data about who wasn't drinking and what the types of people, what types of people were they? Tell us a little bit about the demographic of your bar and Getaway, Sam.
Yeah, it's always an interesting question because first of all, you know, we're not asking people why they're, you know, in the bar. We don't say, do you drink, do you not drink, why do you not drink, how often do you drink? However, a lot of people volunteer that information, whether it's somebody who's coming in and they want us to know that they do drink, you know, it's almost like defensive, like, don't worry, you know, like I go to bars also, but this is cool. Or people who are really proud of the fact that they don't drink or they're cutting back or they're taking a break. And I would say that's the majority of people who share their stories is people who come in and they say, I'm training for a marathon. I just needed a break, or I've been sober 16 years. I never thought I'd be in a bar again. So in terms of demographic, I mean, you know, I always tell people it's roughly 50-50 split between people who are really not drinking, whether it's temporary or long-term, but people who are just decided I'm not drinking tonight. And then people who are just, you know, sober curious or like just curious, you know, just out in New York City and heard about this thing and wanted to check it out. And again, we've gotten a lot of good press, so that, you know, brings in a crowd that might have never thought about this before, but might now say it's interesting. You know, I want to check it out. Okay,
Lorelei, I've seen pictures of your kind of demographic, and it looks really cool. Tell us a bit about the people that come to your events.
Thank you for that compliment. I agree. Our people are the coolest. Our demographic is actually about 70-30, and 2/3 are drinkers. So only 1/3 of our audience is, you know, sober or never drank, or like long-term non-drinkers, which is always a big surprise for a lot of people. And I think that it's just a result of kind of the vibe that we put out, the places that we've popped out in. And it's a pretty young crowd. I would say our core is millennial. although we always strive to be intergenerational. So we've seen people at like totally broad ends of the spectrum of age. It's super inclusive, very diverse. What else? What else can I say about our crowd? Because I actually know a lot about them because we've been doing, we've always done research since the first time we started. So I know that most people, a lot of people who tell us like how they would describe our bar say it's a bar but better. And so it's this really interesting shift from a mindset of restriction of like, oh, I can't drink, to, oh my God, I really don't feel like drinking and I'm so glad this exists. Oh, and another thing that I will say about, two things. We were oftentimes in spaces where there was alcohol upstairs and we were downstairs without alcohol. And people would come from upstairs being like, yo, this is more fun. What's going on down here? And we'd be like, you are totally welcome. Come through, but you gotta leave your drink because this is an alcohol-free space. And everyone would be like, so that was a thing. And I forgot the other thing, so I'll let the next person go.
Don't worry. We all forget things on a regular basis. And so I'm going to ask you, Chris. I've got a question in here, which is basically what I'm asking you: is what proportion of people are AA, totally sober, and what proportion are more sober curious and moderating at your bar and events?
Yeah, so we do ask everyone who comes in for all information. We send out a quarterly survey of people who have signed up to our emailing list because we want to know who we're serving. We want to know what they're looking for because they inform us. Like, we are very much community driven and receptive to all sorts of suggestions. I call my customers my investors, and every time you spend $1 at Sands Bar in Austin or on the tour, you are investing into this idea and growing this idea and growing this industry. So you're absolutely an investor. And when we do our surveys, and I think the last survey we did was the first quarter of 2020 before the world changed. And it was consistent. About 70% of people that come into Sands Bar do not identify as being sober or in long-term recovery. They identify as being sober curious, sometimes sober, somewhere on that spectrum. And we focus a lot on that spectrum. We focus on how we can become inclusive, and inclusion looks like acknowledging that there is a real spectrum and that there are people who absolutely continue to drink and want a night off, and there are people that are sober for the rest of their lives, but a very small percentage of the people that come into Sands Bar are in recovery long-term or identify as going to a 12-step recovery group. That is something I'd like to see change. But I think to Sam's point that for a long time, I've been sober for 13 years, and the first 10 years of my sobriety, I didn't know it was possible to go out and socialize. There were just no options. And so to his point, I think we're seeing people kind of coming around, but initially and still, we're not seeing a lot of people in long-term recovery finding that this is a space for them.
Okay, thank you. I mean, certainly here at the Virgin Mary, we see ourselves, we were probably, a bit like you, Lorelei, when people were saying, "Oh, you're going to get a load of millennials coming," but our kind of demographic is really people that just don't want to drink for whatever reason. As Sam said, they may be training for something. They could be pregnant. They could be kind of, here just on a night out. And we actually hear of groups that come into the bar where one person in that group doesn't drink, and they've been kind of to other pubs in Dublin, and they say, right, come to the Virgin Mary, and I'm going to bring you all in. And they're all like, well, yeah, well, we're only going to be staying for one drink, and that's it. But then they come and they stay for much longer than they expected. Some groups come and stay for the whole night, and they find the whole kind of experience of drinking without alcohol really quite surprising to them. And I think you'll all have experienced that people are surprised by what can be drunk, without alcohol being in the equation. I'm conscious that we've got about 6 minutes left. So what I want to talk about now is a little bit about the situation we're in and how we're looking to plan to go forward. What are your kind of short and long-term goals? And David, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So we I mean, I guess like everybody, I think on the call, but being an independent business, with the mandatory shutdown of the hospitality sector in the UK, middle of March, we moved immediately into running as a shop, so as a takeaway off license for people to get their drinks from, and also as a next day drinks delivery service across the whole of London. So two things that we identified. One was that people are obviously staying at home but still want to have a drink or have a virtual drink with colleagues or friends. That obviously dispatch times from the established players was disrupted because the post had been disrupted. So we used our small team to basically get drinks out to people across London. And the other thing to say on it really that and these revenue streams that we've developed during the lockdown, we're absolutely going to keep on now. Now we're returning to business as usual. We're open again now, obviously for drinking and dining customers. But that drinks delivery service and running as a shop, and specific to the low and no category, it was really interesting that March, April, May, June, as we got further through lockdown, our alcohol-free and low alcohol sales went up, where I think people had probably had so much of just kind of drinking alcohol at home that they were like, I need to start thinking about moderating, etc. And the sales of our low and no products really went up as we went through lockdown. And yeah, we're just going to be working really hard to make sure that those additional revenue streams, as I say, that we keep those as we return to the new normal.
Lorelei, I'm going to pick up on this with you here. Beyond drinks, what are you planning to do going forward, and how do you see your future?
I think I kind of previewed that one earlier with talking about how we're launching this mastermind series. By the way, if anyone is interested, please sign up for our newsletter and you'll hear about it. And research reports, and really kind of focusing right now on things that don't involve a real life face-to-face experience until we truly feel like that is safe. Because for a couple of reasons, one, we really do operate at a scale. Our model doesn't make sense until we have like 100+ people at a party. And so until that is truly safe, like, we don't want to take a chance with our staff, with our guests. Like, we want to make sure that that's cool.
Okay, Chris, how do you see, just a little bit about your kind of present short-term future, and then what do you see in the long term?
Yeah, so like everyone else, we're doing virtual events, which I was not all about at first, but have been great, actually. And we've actually started partnering outside of the sober space and wellness space, and really looking at other ways that we can continue conversation. And like Sam, or I think it was David said, we're going to continue to, have these events outside of the in real life experience. We're going to start doing some to-go, and continue to make and build community across the country. And that's something that's not going to change. And in the future, I think we are going to see a change in the way that we go out, the way that we experience community and connection in physical spaces. And so, we're looking at what we can do long-term at Sands Bar to make sure that we are still able to gather in the safest way possible. And I'm not in any hurry to push it. When it feels right, it feels safe. And in Texas, it does not feel safe right now. When it feels safe, we'll go back to meeting in real life. But right now, I think it's most important to keep our community safe by hosting online events.
Sam, what about yourself?
Yeah, just what Chris was saying. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it. I mean, we are like, we're not ready to do the full bar thing right now. I don't think we're legally allowed to. I mean, I know we're not, indoors at least, but even outdoors, it just doesn't feel like a time to have people like gathering en masse yet. But also, people I think are just not going out the way they used to right now. People's habits have changed. So anyway, we're doing coffee right now. It's our way of staying afloat, and I love doing it. But I do want to bring back the full menu as soon as possible, or at least a new menu. And we're also doing to go. We're selling NA beer. wine, spirits, as like a retail shop. So, let us know, guys, what you want us to be doing, and we'll keep adapting.
Guys, I think we are close to running out of time. I thank all you pioneers for coming and joining this panel. It's really interesting talking to you and meeting you, for the first time, I suppose, kind of face to face. And I will definitely be in touch with you on a more regular basis going forward, because I think if we're all sharing our experiences like that, we'll all benefit from it and learn new things. So thank you very much to you all. And I hope everybody enjoyed watching.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.